catching holes in that hose. And you're not making the water go too hard, and you have it open, it's not going to leak out of those pinholes.
Yeah, no, and I really want to. I'm hoping maybe tomorrow, you know. Yeah, I really want to just another way, you know. So it'll be nice to see it.
Those are the complexes that you're seeing there. So the electrons flow through there. It's like a
malé zpoždění. Máme tady odborníky z několika států, od Slovenie přes Spojené státy až po Českou republiku. Takže budeme dávat otázky a odpovědi. To je čisté konopí z Nepálu. Kdyby se někdo ptal, co mám na hlavě.
Last month I got some paper from my friend who was in Israel on a conference, and he said to me that now they're kind of discovering that the best treatment for cancer is 50-50 relations for THC and CBD. So my question is, because in practice we have a lot of proof that high THC and low CBD that cure the cancer. And my question is this information maybe not true that I got it, or I mean, is it the quantity that heals, or is it the relations for THC and CBD, or is it both? Because this is very important. Also on this paper there was a ratio for epilepsy, and it says 7:1. Which means 7 CBD, 1 THC. So what's your opinion about all that?
You cannot generalize because each patient is different. And as I said, what helps to one doesn't help to the other, and just opposite. That is why we must do our best to find for particular patient the best solution. The best strain which helps just to this particular patient. So situation is not such easy because patients are different, and sometimes strain which is necessary for these patients is not available. So sometimes growers must try several strains and find the correct strain for the particular patient. Because if different patients have the same disease, the same cancer, like cancer of lung, you know, two patients, cancer of lung, this can be two different cancers, you know. So it means that it doesn't mean that the same strain can treat both patients. What do you think, Bob?
Well, the plant itself is incredibly variable in terms of its cannabinoid, terpenes, and all of the goodies that constitute that plant. And likewise, humans are totally variable. And what you're looking for is an interface between the plant and the human being that's going to help restore health. And it's not something that's predictable. The reason there's strain shortages is because the governments have chosen to follow policies that make the people sick, die young, and die unhealthy. What we need is to free this, not medicine, this essential nutrient for modern man. If you want to live longer and you want to be healthy, you must consume cannabis on a regular basis. It's an anti-aging drug, and it inhibits all age-related illnesses. Why does the government think they have the right to force us into any kind of regulation when it comes to growing in your backyard a plant that you need for your own health?
Maybe one thing. This is actually the fight that we are having everywhere. When you are discussing with the public servants, or you're discussing with doctors, they said we need exact quantity, we need exact ratio, we need a well standardized issue, fine regulated. And this is a paradigm of cannabis. You cannot do this. It's so individual that you cannot prescribe exactly you need so many grams, so many of what. This is something that is really happening by walking or by running with someone. And it's a question for the two of you. How shall we address this?
You know, the fact is that the strain which is good for one patient, as we said, is not good for the other one. And the amount which must use patient, what is not enough for one patient is too much for the other one. So we must work with each particular patient and find for him the correct strain and the correct amount. You must understand this. That is why we every time start with particular strain with very small amount a week, and we increase the amount, and then patients must feel influence of this plant as soon as he feels it, so he can tell you if it's good for him or not. Experienced patients can tell you exactly. Unexperienced patients can explain you what they feel, and you can according to that tell them if it's good or if they must change the strain.
What do you think?
Well, I'm not a scientist like a couple of these guys up here, but what I do is talk to people all over the world, and I've coached probably 1,000+ patients to health. With seizures, generally what you hear is that CBD is what's needed. I echo what these gentlemen have said, that it really depends on the patient. There's a high-profile case of a little girl in the United States called Novali, who was born with part of her brain missing. She has hundreds of seizures. They tried CBD, and all it did was make it worse. When they got her on THC, the difference was phenomenal, and she's gone something like 140, 150 days now without a seizure. It's really amazing. This little girl was blind. She couldn't sit. They said she would never show emotion. She would never talk. Well, this little girl can now see. She can sit. She's talking. The other day she said, "Mama," and then she went, "Hey, hey." And it's just amazing the difference it's made. I know there's a lot of talk out there about breast cancer, hormone-driven breast cancers, and whether it should be high THC or high CBD, and the theory is that high THC pushes the cancer sometimes in a hormone-driven breast cancer. CBD became the new kid on the block, and lately the patients that I've had contact with that had hormone-driven breast cancers, I'm talking about 100, 150 cases, where we did high CBD, and when I say high CBD, I'm talking about cannabis derived CBD, 60%. We haven't had one success with CBD alone. That doesn't mean it's not going to work, that's just my experience with it. So again, it's really, really individual. Kids whose seizures are controlled with CBD very effectively, sometimes when they hit puberty, the CBD fails to work anymore, and once they've added THC into the mix, their seizures are controlled. So it's all variables.
I think until we don't have method to determine the level of endocannabinoids in our body, it's very hard to determine also the dosage. But as I understand, the endocannabinoids are in very lows you know, in the body. So that's your work to determine how to figure out how to determine the level of endocannabinoids. Because until then we don't actually know what we're doing.
Knowing the level of endocannabinoids is not really what's important here. What's important is that you're able to manipulate the very source of life with cannabis extracts. The very source of life is the food that we eat, and specifically the carbohydrates versus the fats that we eat. Those are our major energy sources, and they function completely the opposite. The carbohydrate burning promotes differentiation, and the fat burning allows the cells to undergo what's called autophagy, where they recycle their damaged pieces and then come out whole again. And when you have sugar burning cells that have kind of stretched their survivable limits, meaning they've developed ways of dealing with free radicals, then if you have ones that are sugar burners and caught in that mode and you force them into burning fat, then those cells die. And your CB1 allows cells to remain in the sugar burning mode, whereas your CB2 forces them into the fat burning mode. So if you haven't had chemo and radiation and you're having the chances are that initial cancer is a sugar burner. And when you give cannabis to that, you told me you have like an 85% success rate. That's way better than they're getting in the hospitals. And you know, nobody's getting sick, people are getting healthier again. So the thing that's important is not what a doctor reads who doesn't ever use cannabis. You can never have a cannabis expert who doesn't use cannabis. I'm sorry, it makes no sense to me. So here's an expert who's treated lots of people, and other experts who've helped people treat themselves. You see, that's what it's about. You give them the information and you get them the oil and they treat themselves. And if they don't like it, they don't do it, or they try a different variable. There's so many routes and ways to accomplish this, and that's what everybody's individual responsibility is. Once they choose to go down this path, they have to find what works best for them.
Jindřich Bayer.
I think most everything has been said. From my perspective, I would like patients to work with high THC oils whenever it's possible. High CBD oils, okay for the beginning, for children, or for cases where microdosing is all that is required. Otherwise, I would always like to see patients, especially cancer patients, use high THC oils, because I'm firmly convinced that THC is where the main magic is. As far as the other cannabinoids, we really know very little, because now it's 144 cannabinoids that are known, and 1,234 substances that can be isolated from cannabis. So what do we know? Now we're testing for 10 cannabinoids maybe, and you know how variable the results from individual labs can be. So we don't even know how to test for it properly. So I would just say, let's stick with observational research. You know, let's get an idea of what it is, but then it's really individual. You don't know if they will eat a mandarin or an apple before taking the oil. That will change the terpene balance and this and that. So that's very individual. The most important thing is how sedative the oil is, how well the patients will sleep when they eat the oil, and how comfortable they will feel. If they get euphoria, good sleep, and a big aphrodisiac effect, that's what I want them to have, and that's what high THC oils do, and CBD oils do not come close. That's all I know for now. Okay?
So another question.
May I ask you something? I have a question. If I have a situation that I have two different oils, one is very high THC oil for something about 98% of THC, and another oil is for about, I don't know, 80% of THC, but very high CBD, 10 and more CBD. What do you think? What is the better oil for the cancer? the high THC oil with 95 THC and low, very low CBD, maybe 1 or 2%, or the okay high level of THC, 85 maybe, and 10% of CBD? That is the first question. And the other second question is, what do you think? If I made the oil, cannabis extract, from the indoor plant and from the outdoor plant, what is the better medicine? And I really, really hope that you will give me the answer, because this is very important to me, because you know why am I asking? Thank you very much.
What matters is what works. And I don't think you can predict in an individual case what's going to work. In general, I don't like pure THC. So if you have something that's very high THC, that means you're lower in other things. What's important is to make sure you have everything necessary. I'd like to give just one example so people appreciate how our nature actually is. When I talk about flow-dependent structures and things that can perturb our biochemistry, because it addresses these questions when you understand what I'm trying to say. Every day, every one of your cells receives about 10,000 damages from free radicals that are made by your body, every day. And you've got something like 15 trillion cells. So you're getting 15 trillion cells getting 20,000 damages a day. And one single damage in one single cell can kill you. If you had a free radical damage altering the expression of a gene that regulated cell division.
Suppositories, oral taking, or inhalation, what is the exactly the best model for intake of cannabis? What is the question? Do we have data how much bioefficacy of the oral taking of the suppositories, and how much is when we take when we mix the bio oil like cocos, like olive, with cannabis decarboxylated extracts, especially with the THC extracts. So do we have any real data that we can take for our patients and our friends?
Hello? Okay. Of course, the best bioavailability is per rectum, but I think that Božo can answer, because he has good experience with suppository.
All available data are saying that the best bioavailability and absorption is through rectal way. There is also a problem because at oral intake some part of CBD turns also, I think, to THC, and we don't know how actually the gastric acid affect the cannabinoids. Our experience is that the rectal suppository works the best, and as you see on my slide, I also took the slide from Lumir's lecture, when is exactly the bioavailability of the oral intake, inhaling, or rectal intake.
Okay, so another question.
Hello,
when you're thinking about bioavailability, you should understand something. When you're smoking it, it goes right to your brain. When you eat it, it goes through your liver, and it gets converted to 11-hydroxy. And they have different effects, and when you take it rectally, people don't get high at all. So there's clearly significant differences and different biological effects that are going to come as a result of how you're taking it in. But in general, the important thing, especially with cancer, is get as much in as you can. But don't do it orally all in one dose in the beginning. Start low if you're doing it orally. If you take too much, you'll never want to do it again. Whereas if you do it rectally, you can start with high doses. We have kids taking a few grams a day.
Okay.
Hello?
I'd like to ask how long does it take in Czech conditions to decarboxylate by itself, just hanging up? If it takes like weeks, years, and decarboxylation is question of temperature and question of the layer. So if you have oven and you want decarboxylate, you think just naturally. It depends if you keep it in dark or if you keep it in refrigerator or if you dark. Of course, if you keep it dark, it takes longer time for the carboxylation, more than a year. It can be, if you keep it in refrigerator, maybe it's 2 years. If you keep it in refrigerator, just air conditioned, you know. Evacuate it can be just different story. It depends on the can be vacuumized, like in vacuum. Of course, if you vacuum it, these are special sacks. When you put, you have a bag like 2 meters high. You add a vacuum cleaner and you evacuate it. You close it so it shrinks and it becomes very small amount, and you can keep it in a refrigerator and still decarboxylate it. No, and it's not decarboxylated for a long time. But in that condition, in the vacuum stuff, everything is on how you keep it. If it's on the temperature of the intensity of light, of evacuation, maybe you can before evacuation insert nitrogen gas, so it will be even better. So I cannot tell you just directly. Thanks very much.
And this is what works fine for you. I am not a big user of cannabis. Compared to some of the people around the table who are really truck drivers, they have a lot of cannabis with them and everywhere. I am a more bicycle man. I'm not smoking joints actually. I smoke with my vaporizer. And I can tell you I smoke small quantity, but whenever I'm smoking, it's a good trip. It's really a good trip. I like riding the bicycle. But what I learned lately is if you start a day with a small amount of CBD, and then during the day go to a web with a lot of THC, it's beautiful. It stays, and you never get the overload. So this is my experience, but I cannot say this is the experience of everybody else. So, as a governmental man, this is maximum that I can say, because otherwise I will.
Okay, so you heard experiences of different persons. So another question, lady.
Where the pharmaceutical companies have truly come up with something that's very functional. So the people with hepatitis C that had previously, in general, not been able to be successfully treated, they have an incredibly high success rate with it. But they charge something like $100,000 for the treatment. Now I know of specific examples where people had Hep C, did the high dose cannabis, and are now free of Hep C. So I don't know how often that works, but I know it can work, and it's the same kind of a story, because you're dealing with a viral infection, and how that virus powers its own replication, and how cannabis influences the energy sources that it needs.
I know that a few of my people have Hep C, and I think of the 10 that I can think of off the top of my head, 8 of them are clear of Hep C and 2 of them are well on their way. One individual it took a long time, over a year. The least amount of time it took was 2 months with another individual. So yet again, it's such an individual thing.
as long as they make their environment, the universe, stupider, quicker. Entropy must increase. Entropy can decrease within us as long as we make more waste. So we got to be able to do that intelligently, okay? And in our society, that means recycling. And what I'm going to show you is this dynamic practice manifests the same things within cells, within organisms, and then within our society. So the same way we need a recycle in society, we need a recycle within ourselves. Garbage. And we know what's garbage? It gets created by the
se odrazu odu i vidjet ćeš sve u ogledalu se stalno menja pogledaj sada lopimo lepo još tega im oproste
CBD samo nije ni THC samo. Jedan kanabinoid koji izvučeš, vam je li najbitniji CBD? Da, zato ti ga izlačiš kad kupuješ. I'm talking about that I'm getting very nervous about CBD, only CBD oil, because only without CBD is basic to present it to people, to buyers, customers as cure. This is not a cure, it can help when you are using full plant extract, full cannabis plant extract, then add some CBD, no problem.
Cases where microdosing is enough, but CBD oils can help. Or topically.
Yeah, of course. Topic is very good. But only for any cannabinoid, not only THC or CBD. Any cannabinoid you isolate from the plant. You just have one part that's married for some part or not start working without some other cannabinoids to make him do this. So only full extract is pure. All other
Skini i baci staro odelo i neka te prati energija tvoja. Kreni na veliki put preko mora on day on liberation. 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 In a day on liberation. Skini i baci staro odelo.